Cecile, we've been having conversations on and off TV about this journey, about, I think, probably over a decade ago, the need to protect the right to abortion health care. But really over the last year, to see the country track with where all of your decades of work has always been. What are your personal feelings 1 year from the Dobbs decision?
Well, I think one of the most interesting takeaways after a year of this is that it is absolutely clear this country and the voters in this country support abortion rights. And it is, you stated in the polling that you just showed, it's only gotten stronger. I think as people have actually had to face, what does it mean to take away the right of people to make decisions about their pregnancy? It's no longer a slogan. It's no longer a hypothetical. And that has absolutely changed people's feelings. And as we know, more people are talking about abortion. Everyone knows someone who's faced a troubled pregnancy. Many people know someone who's had an abortion. And I think it's come out in the open. And the last thing that's interesting to me about this is as more and more people have realized that the rest of the country is pro-choice, as we saw in Kansas and have continued to see, more and more people feel confident saying, I am too. And that includes Republicans and independents.
Yeah, I mean, Cecile, the banner under which a majority of Americans reside is pro-choice America, which always meant the choice, more options in front of you. I wonder how impactful you think the stories are. We've always focused with you on the real impact on real women, whether it's in Texas or other states. And the country got to know Amanda Zarowski, who lost Willow, a daughter she was pregnant with, and she almost died seeking health care after she lost that pregnancy. The country got to know OBGYNs trying to take care of young victims of rape who are now under criminal scrutiny. I mean, the country has gotten to know the faces, young, female, scared, and very much under the thumb, if the Republicans have their way, of not just judgment, but potential criminality. How impactful do you think that's been over the last year?
It's made a huge difference. And in fact, I'm sure you saw the report this week. This is a major poll of OBGYNs in the country, 2/3 of whom are saying Dobbs has eliminated their ability to make the best decisions for their patients often who have complicated pregnancies, miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies. 2/3 of the doctors also said it's a huge problem now that the growing inequity in healthcare, and that particularly for Black women who already have had 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related complications than other women, that's becoming more severe. And one of the last things that I think is is going to have such a long effect is the loss of OBGYNs. I know in Texas, 19% fewer OBGYN residents have applied to do their residency in the state of Texas, a state who already half the counties don't even have an OBGYN. This is the effect of Dobbs. It's even far beyond just the lack of access to abortion. It's affecting the lack of access for women to health care at all.
I want to turn to that impact on care and on the doctors who would provide it. Let me put up what this patchwork looks like as of today. It changes all the time. This is a map of states where abortion is protected. For now, it's blue on our map. The banned states, most or all of them had trigger laws that banned abortion after the Supreme Court ruling. And then the highly restricted states, vast swaths of the country, Dr. Patel, are not blue. So vast swaths of the country are either banned or restricted reproductive health care. How are women and doctors faring?
Yeah, so we now have some data in this year that follows the Dobbs decisions. We know that there's a shift in where people are getting abortion care because you put up that map, there's numbers to it. There were 93,000 fewer legal abortions in states that banned or had those severe restrictions. And that's something that we should take in light of the fact that there was an increase of about 69,000 legal abortions in states that you show as blue, where abortion remained legal. And I think that this, just to get to the stories, that a woman in the South, in Texas, for example, the new travel time for her to be able to access and I'll just call it basic health care. This isn't abortion care. People don't come into our offices with signs and that say, my last menstrual period was such, and I'm at exactly 5 weeks and 6 days. We take care of the person in front of us, but when they need to travel someplace, that time for a Black woman in Texas can be 1 to 2 full work days. And when you think about Texas also being one of the states that failed to expand Medicaid, Nicole, that just compounds their barriers and access to care and makes their lives even shorter. And then to the point that Cecile raised about doctors, it is widespread. This graduating class of medical students for the first time has said that they're cynical about entering careers in not just obstetrics and gynecology, but anything where they feel that they can have some sort of criminal activity. That includes primary care. That includes services where we concentrate in women's health care for preventive services. That is not just going to affect abortion care or a certain discrete amount of services. That's going to affect anyone who has any women's health needs whatsoever and their families. Think about who's taking care of children. The most common person that presents for any sort of abortion care, Nicole, is somebody who also already has children in their household,
right.
People who are working. So we need to put names and faces and stories so that people understand this is your family member, this is your neighbor, this is you.
You know, Michele, Cecile and Kavita have both mentioned the disproportionate impact on women of color. They're not just women of color, they're statistically moms of color. This is something that I think you and others warned about before the Supreme Court took this momentous step. But the damage has been felt and experienced in those communities disproportionately as well. What are your thoughts about how we continue or improve our ability to tell their stories?
Well, let's be clear. Any woman of any reproductive capacity, a person of reproductive capacity, has been harmed by this. There's a dignity harm if you even have the resources, but you have to leave your state, you have to leave your family and travel to New York or California or Colorado in order to get that health care. That is still a dignity harm and an inconvenience and a cost. It just happens to be that the cost can also be deadly if you happen to be poor, a woman of color, a Black woman, that already nationally 3.5 times more likely to die by carrying a pregnancy to term than their white counterparts. But we know in the backdrop of abortion care in the United States, the Supreme Court has already acknowledged that you're 14 times more likely to die by carrying a pregnancy to term in the United States than by having an abortion. And so when we add that to it, and the knowledge that the Supreme Court has about that, and the knowledge that these states' departments of health already have about this, then we really have to talk about what this really means. And it is the equivalent of setting people up for a death sentence. And that's not hyperbole. That just simply happens to be horrifically where we are in the United States as the leading country in all of the industrialized world, the leading country in maternal mortality and also maternal morbidity, which means that if you happen to survive the pregnancy in a state like Mississippi or Louisiana or Florida or Alabama, you might survive with life-threatening conditions that follow you for the rest of your life. And as you've mentioned, so many of these women happen already be mothers.
You know, Michele, that's what makes the political conversation very unsatisfying. I mean, of course, a vast majority of Americans say this isn't what I wanted. And of course, a vast majority of Americans are interested in voting in people who wouldn't have us live in a country akin to The Handmaid's Tale. But here we are. The numbers are real. This is what we are living with right now, Michele.
That's right. And what you're pointing to is the immorality of this. This is what the vice president has spoken to. And it's clear to us because it's clear to the Supreme Court because they've already acknowledged this at the Supreme Court. And so then that begs the question, do they care? Do the lawmakers who've enacted these abortion bans, do they care about the girls and women in their states? When we think about the cruelty of these laws and the fact that they're banning abortion without even making exceptions for cases of rape or incest. And as you mentioned when you began, Nicole, right after Dobbs, we saw the story of a 10-year-old girl having to flee one state to get to the other in order to have that pregnancy terminated. She was fleeing Ohio to get to Indiana. Florida. There were lawmakers after that said it was a hoax. It couldn't be, showing a grave naivete and ignorance, showing their own lack of concern because, of course, the story was real. But she wasn't alone. We've also seen judges participate in this with denying teenagers the ability to be able to get a judicial bypass. In one case in Florida, with the judge saying that the young woman was too immature to have an abortion. But that leaves us with the question, mature enough to be a parent? And this is the landscape in the United States, and it's far afield from any other peer country at all.